Archibald also lives in Healdsburg, and we've become quite good friends. She's really been quite a mentor to me, and her book, The Accidental Cowgirl, I have to get it right too. 6 cows, no horse, and no clue, has just sold and sold and sold. Even she's surprised. And why? I mean, memoirs are sometimes a hard sell. That's what my experience in distributing books for 2 years have been. But her book is so funny, and also it seems like a lot of city people have this idea that they can move out on 16 acres of nowhere and have a really fun, relaxing time sitting on their porch drinking wine, which is exactly what Carl, the accidental cowboy sitting here also, thought would happen. It's a very funny book. Mary Lynn Archibald is a freelance editor and copywriter and author of 2 books, Briar Hopper, A History, and a memoir of one woman's life from 1913 to 1945. Her next book, and her working title is Show Off, From Soquel to the Summer of Love, is a memoir that expands from her early life on a chicken ranch in Soquel, California, to San Francisco in the 50s and 60s, and her varied careers as a switchboard operator, model, sales clerk, chorus girl, and Miss San Francisco wannabe. It's due out in the summer of
this year.
This year. It says 2012 on here. Anyway, I'd really love for you to hear a funny story from Mary Lynn Archibald, the accidental cowgirl. Yeehaw. Oh, she's got her boots on.
No, I wore my boots the last time I met with you, and they ruined my feet. So much for that. I'm just going to read you a little bit from the book jacket because it kind of sets the tone, and then I'll read you a little bit from the middle of the book. We had planned to relax on the 120 acres of lush beauty called Twin Creeks Ranch. But when Carl signed the papers, he discovered we had inherited 6 cows, 2 cats, a flock of wild turkeys, and a working cattle ranch. With one stroke of the pen, our relaxation idea had gone out the window. It was crazy, it was sad, it was funny, it was pathetic. It was also one of the most uplifting experiences of our lives. If you're over 50 or in a job rut or looking for an adventure or all of the above, and you too yearn for a relaxing country retreat, perhaps you should read this book first. They say love is blind, and if you've ever fallen in love with a place, warts and all, you know it's true. And God help us, we fell in love. Okay. Well, we definitely lost the weed battle after the first year we were up there. And so much for Ruth Stout and her hassle-free gardening. All it did was grow more weeds on top of hay. Our dog Snazzy had many adventures at Twin Creeks Ranch. There was so much to do. Chase rabbits, dig for gophers, eat cow dung, wade in the streams, herd cattle, swim in the lake, have close encounters with skunks, and of course, chase deer. She had to be encouraged to do the latter. Carl had spent many mornings out on the deck, nude or nearly so, barking at whole herds that had gathered in our upper pasture during the night and were quietly grazing on our superior grass. I looked up what they eat, and the encyclopedia said boars, whatever they are. But the squire is hard to convince, so he has taken to barking in mostly vain efforts to scare off the deer. At first, the dog was only mildly interested in this bizarre human activity. so there was a great deal of Carl's barking to be heard. Consequently, when Carl went to the post office for mail one morning and encountered our neighbor, Albert Walpole there, Albert said, "What the hell kind of dog you got over there, Carl?" "Oh, that was me," said Carl. "I'm giving the dog barking lessons." Oh, Albert didn't know what to make of that. Reminds me of the big story last May, I think. Snazzy may not have barked at deer, but she never had any problem chasing them. One morning I was ranch sitting alone, as I often did when Carl had to travel. The dog started whining before I was out of bed, and I figured she just had to pee. So literally I let her out of the glassed-in porch area where she slept, and she bolted for the pasture by the big barns, muttering under her breath. Too late, I saw the 4 deer feeding there, 2 does and 2 small spotted fawns. The does left the pasture fence, and one of the fawns was clever enough to crawl under it, but that left one helpless fawn trapped in the enclosure. "Oh my God," I shouted and ran out the door yelling, "Snazzy, no, 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 no!" The dog kept on going, with me right after her, dressed in a t-shirt and Victoria's Secret black bikini panties, barefoot. Snazzy kept on, easily beating me to the fawn. By the time I arrived, winded, feet bleeding from the stones and thistles I had traversed in my haste, and yelling all the while, the dog had her mouth around the fawn's neck. They both were startled by my arrival. Continuing to yell, "Snazzy, no, 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 no!" I grabbed the dog's huge head and said, "Drop it!" as loudly and menacingly as I could. And much to my surprise, she surrendered her catch momentarily, long enough for me to grab the dog by her collar and yank her away. A brief scuffle ensued, but I finally got the upper hand by sitting on the 100-pound dog until the fawn finally figured it out and slipped under the fence to safety. When I finally limped back to the house, alternately sitting on and dragging the dog the whole distance, the light on my answering machine was blinking. Who could it be, I wondered? Nobody ever called us there. There were 3 messages. Carl had called in a panic because Angie, Albert's wife, had called him and said, "Something's wrong with Mary Lynn. I heard her yelling at somebody and I called twice and she didn't answer the phone. Albert's on his way over there now and I'm headed over with my bolt cutters because he yelled and said, 'Your gate is padlocked.'" Nobody locked their gates up there except us. "What's going on?" said Carl when I telephoned. "Well, everything's under control, but the dog brought down a fawn and I had to rescue it. It's a long story." "Well, you better call Angie and head off Albert. I'll hang up and you can call me back later. I thought you were being murdered or something." I called Angie, then threw on some jeans and my sneakers and left the dog locked in her sleeping porch. I ran up the road to the gate to find Albert and another neighbor, Cindy. Seemed she was going to climb over the gate and check things out while Albert backed her up with firepower. They laughed and went home. First I called Angie to thank her. She said, "My Lord, girl, I was sure you was being raped or something. I heard you hollering, and it sounded like you was saying, 'Angie, no, Angie, help.' So I sent Albert over to see if you was okay." Well, anyway, why don't you come on over and have a cup of coffee and some of this fresh coffee cake I just pulled out of the oven. You've been through a lot, girl. "Thanks," I panted, "but I've got to call Carl first and fill him in on the story." "Well, you go on and then come over to the house and just sit and visit a while." I did just that, but it took me some time to calm down and tell the whole silly story. The next day I went to the post office and Lou, the postmistress, said, "I heard you had a little problem with the dog and the deer." She laughed then, no doubt thinking how ridiculous I must have looked. I expect I did. How grateful I was for good neighbors and for how fast news traveled through those mountains.
Okay, any questions for, I wanted to add one story that I always really enjoyed when I read that. Carl and Mary Lynn met through a want ad through the Press Democrat. And this started an adventure.
Wasn't planning on that.
I had to add that. Are there any questions for the accidental cowgirl? And actually, Carl is very good at speaking also, if you wanted to ask the accidental cowboy. Never had an audience this
So quiet.
Yeah. I will ask you how you came about buying the property and where was it located and how long were you there?
Oh, good point, yes. Well, we were there for 12 years. The property was in Trinity County, still is. We don't own it anymore. Our endurance gave out after a while.
12 years is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it was really an amazing experience. So it was life-changing for us. And for people that didn't grow up on a ranch, it was wrenching to get rid of cows because these were beef cattle. And so after the first time, we gave up and sent them off to auction and assumed that they were going to have a wonderful life with some 4-H'er. That was how we deluded ourselves anyway.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you write every day or when the spirit moves you?
I wish I could say I wrote every day, but I don't. No, I write whenever I can. I usually bring something with me in the car when I go somewhere with Carl because he always plans to go on 12 more errands than I intended to go on myself, so I write then. I get a lot of writing done then. Anybody else? Yeah.
Why did you stop being a cowgirl?
It was a matter of sheer self-preservation. We started when we were in our 50s, and after 12 years, it was just too much. 120 acres, and we ended up with about 35 head of cattle, I think, at one point. And we were doing everything, you know. He was branding them and inoculating them and putting the ear tags in their ears and making sure they were okay at all times, and, you know, having to kill one of our cows that had a prolapsed uterus. Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying, don't ever name your cattle.
Yeah, and we named them all.
Yeah.
We had Daisy and Buttercup and Trouble and
Also,
Pansy.
didn't you say that you commuted?
A lot of the time we commuted because we were still maintaining our place in Fieldsburg, and we had a garden and an orchard there, and we had a garden and an orchard up at the ranch, and I was growing herbs up there for an herb co-op. So, you know, it was a lot of water systems and a lot of fooling with water systems and cows stepping on water systems and
And then at the beginning, weren't you commuting and you were an interior decorator?
yes, yes, I had to come back now and then to do my jobs there and clean the cow manure out from under my fingernails. Put on a silk blouse or two. It was a very schizophrenic life. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, authors and friends. I think we had an amazing variety of books here. I love to do this for that reason.